is very, very significant. Let's begin with the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'anu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Great. Now, what I have planned today in the 6 or 7 pages of lesson plan that I've constructed over the last 12 hours. And if you think I'm kidding, you're wrong. And what I'd like to do, and this is a burden for you, what I'd like for us to do is to talk together. So I know that some people prefer to hang back a little bit. I am asking, let's be a little interactive today. Let us speak with each other. First of all, amazing announcement. Amazing. There is going to be a fantastic program at Resnick, 10 o'clock Sunday morning. 2 brilliant speakers. One is Professor Leah Hockman. One is me. And the moderator will be Rabbi Dr. Tamara Eskenazi. That is 2 or 3 winners, plus me. It's going to be an excellent program reviewing what has become a best-selling book, and how that happened, I don't know. I was just talking to the CCR Press this morning. They're publishing all kinds of additional materials to support the book because people are buying it, which is weird. Anyway, Sunday, March 24th, 10 to 11:30 a.m. Please come and bring at least 20 of your closest friends. Okay, and if you don't have 20 close friends, call me. I'll give you a list. Okay, next. To know that there was a religious celebration on Thursday. What was the religious celebration on Thursday? Now we're interactive. What was it? What was it once? What was it twice? Who's going to say Ta'anit Esther, the fast of Esther? Okay, so the fast of Esther was on Thursday, which means that Friday evening and Saturday is Purim, right? No. Because of the rules of Shabbat, Purim begins Saturday evening. Okay? So that there's a break from Thursday, Ta'anit Esther, the fast of Esther, till Saturday evening, which will be all kinds of festivities. Now, when I received the call from the Wilshire Boulevard Temple Rabbinic Office's key secretary, one of 25 or 30 people who helped the rabbis run the congregation. Anyway, would you be willing to cover this Shabbat? And I said to myself, well, if it had been the Shabbat for Genesis chapter 1, whoa, I could do creation. Or maybe Exodus chapter 20, we could do the 10 commandments together. Leviticus chapter 18, we could do the holiness code. Or if you want to push it, Deuteronomy chapter 5, the Shema, the 10 commandments all over again. So I said, okay, sure, I'll be glad to cover. And then I looked, I actually knew that what we're studying today is the opening chapter of the book of Leviticus. That is not like any of those that I mentioned, okay? When you mention Leviticus in general, the physiological response is glazed eyeballs. Oh, Leviticus, how exciting. Okay. when I was a pulpit rabbi with congregants and bar and bat mitzvah and all those people, and they would come into the office, oh, Rabbi, little Sarah's all set to have her bat mitzvah. What will be her portion? Oh, look what the calendar says. You're going to be doing leprosy from the book of Leviticus. That actually happened. I had one family resign the congregation over that, but the others let me know that I'm being stubborn in not changing the portion. Because why should my little girl have leprosy on her bat mitzvah date? Okay. A very special friend of mine, Dr. Jacob Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T. And if you're looking for people who are writing brand new, brilliant things on Bible scholarship, remember the name Jacob Wright. He is at the top of the heap right now. Good friend. He wrote the following. What I really wanted to emphasize here, listen, was that the Hebrew Bible is one of the greatest achievements of the human spirit. It is both accessible and relevant to concerns that we have around us today. It helps us address what happens when cataclysm comes at us. How are we to come together as a community? How do we cross lines of division to face threats to our collective existence? What happens when things that we have taken for granted are no longer there? How do we reinvent ourselves? How do we come up with new strategies? Close quote, Jacob Wright. I thought it was a brilliant summation of why each part of the Bible, even the books of Leviticus, even the chapters there, are enormously important. Now, here you can come and help me. What is the primary concern? Where did the name Leviticus come from? Just raise a hand. Leviticus came from, give me a hand. Doing a
the law.
Okay, then not exactly. What did
Sorry.
Leviticus, the name? Susan.
Levi.
Levite. So you assume that
Susan's right.
that Leviticus is all about the Levites. Mostly that's true. Leviticus deals with the Levites. The Hebrew name for Leviticus isn't Leviticus. If you would walk up to a rabbi from the 3rd century and say, oh, let's study Leviticus together, wouldn't understand your English and didn't know what Leviticus is. Torah Kohanim. The Hebrew name, the way it's addressed, Torah Kohanim, the Torah of the priests. In Hebrew school, traditional Hebrew schools, little Jewish kids, they all start out little Jewish kids study the book of Leviticus, chapter 1, verse 1 and following first. This is where they begin their Jewish studies. To make Leviticus palatable, the Hebrew teachers would take a printed book and put a little bit of honey on it, and each kid would lick the sweetness of Leviticus, make a blessing, and on they go. So that's one very nice, it's very traditional, still goes on today. You start with Leviticus. Next, I don't know if any of you have a Tanakh with you or a Chumash. If you have a Hebrew Bible with you and can open to Leviticus chapter 1, verse 1, and if not, I will tell you what's there. The Hebrew word is the opening word of Leviticus, Vayikra. Very often when we refer to the 5 books of Moses, you say Breshit, Shmot, Vayikra. The third book begins with the first word, Vayikra. But there's something weird about that first word. Does anybody know? There's something, if you have the Hebrew Bible, you can see it. It's there in the Hebrew. You can see it. If not, does anybody know? Vayikra is Vav Yud Kuf Resh Aleph. Vayikra, okay, no big deal. Except that in every Torah scroll, the Aleph is small. It doesn't match the other letters. In every Torah scroll ever copied, when you get to Vayikra, read the first word, you get Vav Yud Kuf Resh, and then a little Aleph. A little Aleph. If we're alone, nobody else is listening, I would say to you that that probably was a scribal copyist error that occurred maybe 9th or 10th century. Okay, that's very likely. But what do we know about the perfection of the Torah text in the minds of the Orthodox? What do we know? What do we know about the Torah text? It is absolutely. So could the Aleph be a mistake? Answer, no, because everything's perfect. So if that's the way it is, there must be a reason for it. And maybe that's why little kids are told, start with Vayikra. The key letter is Aleph, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Okay. Now, there is one massive exception in the book of Leviticus, Vayikra, Torah Kohanim, to the statement that it's all about Levitical stuff. Sacrifices, sacrifice, 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 sacrifice. One section, which is one of the most important passages in the entire Torah, even though it's in Leviticus. Does anybody know what that could be? What is there in Leviticus that achieves such power? Give you a hint. It's chapter 18. Chapter 18 of the book of Leviticus, which is called the Holiness Code. You've heard of that before. Holiness Code. And its statements about holiness and about the relationship of the Israelites to God are absolutely top of the line important. If you ever have time, I don't know, if you ever have time, and you want to just read one chapter of the book of Leviticus, read it. It starts off with Kadoshim Tihiyu, Ki Kadosh Ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall be holy, as I, the eternal your God, am holy. And goes on from there. It is very, very important. We call that living in imitation of God. And the book of Leviticus and the Torah totally is powerfully committed to the understanding that our job as Jews is to live in imitation of God. That's not quite the same as wearing a bracelet that says, "What would Jesus do?" That's a little different. To live in imitation of God means that the noblest ethical and moral power of God as we understand it should be our guiding force in life. That's Leviticus chapter 18. That is,
Rabbi Davids, may I share?
please.
I agree with you because that's why I wear long muumuus and stay covered up, because I think that, like Rabbi Leader said, he remembers the first time he kissed his wife 32 years ago. It's sacred and holy, the way we live. The priests anoint their ears, their eyes, their feet, where they walk, where they stand, what they see, what they look, and what they say. It is important.
Okay, thank you very, very. The holiness code reflects what I would consider to be a deep concern over matters that are the center of attention throughout the rest of the Torah. So not only is Leviticus, Vayikra, Torah, Kohanim filled with, and the priest brings this, and this is the sin offering, the guilt offering, and the this offering, and the that offering. Besides all of that, it has other stuff. For example, okay, do I see a hand, Rebecca? Yeah, Rebecca.
Say it's chapter 18, 18:1-8 is the holiness code.
18:19.
18:19, but 18 is all about sexual relations.
And 19. 18 and 19, they're all part of the holiness code. 19 is the one that begins with, "You shall be holy." If you look, thank you. Oh boy, you guys are going to be checking on me. Okay. Yeah, that's where it is. That's where it is. Now, as Rebecca points out, do you want to know what Jewish standards are for sexual relationships?
Yes.
I didn't, that was just a question out of the air. Study the holiness code. Do that. If you want to understand family relationships, no. Oh, if you didn't. So I'm going to give you a gift. One of the key concepts that holds all of Leviticus together is the Hebrew word lahavdil. Can any of you translate lahavdil? Lahavdil. Any notion here? I'll give you a hint. Lahavdil. Risa, you're moving your hand. So yes, I reckon, even though you didn't put on the electronic hand, I will call upon you. Go ahead.
To separate.
Lahavdil
To
is
make a
to
difference.
separate. So where do we know the word lahavdil in a weekly ceremony?
Havdalah.
Havdalah. So lahavdil. One of the guiding principles of Torah legislation, and especially in the book of Leviticus, is separation. Separation between whom? Any thoughts? Separation between whom? Come on, folks, I need you to make me feel good that you're really out there, or I'll start calling on people by name. Ben.
I'm guessing, Rabbi, men and women?
You're doggone right. You got that. Women being superior? No. Well, no, to separate. Yes. and there are very clear distinctions, rules applying. Yes, what other categories of separation are there in Leviticus?
Clean and unclean.
I'm sorry?
Clean and unclean.
Clean. Eric, is that you?
It's Alex.
Who spoke? I'm sorry.
Alex Frazier. I don't have my camera on at the moment, but
Okay. All right. All right. So,
hello.
yes, clean and unclean. So, for example, if an animal dies by itself and you come across the fresh corpse, are you allowed to eat that? No.
No.
Okay. If it's not kosher slaughtered, it is not clean. Unclean. Unclean deals with, okay, Risa?
Israelite and other.
Absolutely. One of the key principles within the Torah and within Leviticus is to erect separation between Jews and everyone else. May I specify that this has nothing to do with superiority? It has to do with group identity. The group hangs together. And therefore, we do things or we don't do things as signs of unity. Can you give me an example of that? That things Jews do that make us different. Okay, Ben, you're on a run. Okay,
I'm
go.
on a run. How about the minyan, Rabbi?
How about what?
A minyan for collecting for services.
Okay, 10 Jewish, we would say, adults. You have to have community. If a non-Jew would come in and sit in that service wanting to say a memorial prayer for a person who was precious, they don't count in the minyan. Not because they are, I'm not going to use terms like impure blood, which is part of the political discussion, not because of that, but because there are things designed to hold Jews together. Minyan is one of them. What else? What other things are uniquely done to hold the Jewish community together? What else?
The bread, the circumcision of our
The
sons.
the circumcision ceremony. Certainly that. There are many, 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 many millions of men who are circumcised. Doesn't make them Jewish. The ceremony of Brit Milah is the Jewish ceremony, right? And other things like that. We can go on. I say again, brilliantly here, the glue that holds much of Jewish law and tradition together is separation.
The ketubah, Rabbi.
Hold it, please. We are not into blending and disappearing. That which would make us blend and disappear is anathema to Leviticus and to Torah. Let's look at another thing. Separation. Are you aware that the original focus of Torah is that we should be vegetarian? You aware? Is that's something you know? When did the eating of meat come to be acceptable? When? We're doing well today. Noah. The time of Noah. If you read the book, excuse me, Rebecca, are you laughing at me? Yeah, I think you are. I'm trying to figure out why.
No, I was trying to remember because I knew the answer, but I couldn't pull it out. And you just did. It was Noah.
Do you know how much I live with? I know the answer, but I can't pull it out. Do you know how much that increases day after day? Let's not. But that is right. Right. Doug. I mean, that's what happens. Okay, so only with the story of Noah do we find Jewish law permitting the eating of flesh animal.
May I
In
ask a question?
response to that the laws of kosher slaughtering were created. Are you aware of what I just said?
Mhm.
Kosher slaughtering became an accepted doorway to the eating of meat, so that we should know and remember that the taking of the life of an animal to eat is not the number one issue for Torah. It is a compromise. And if you're going to do it, make sure that the animal is slaughtered as painlessly as possible. Don't eat the blood. Things go on and on from there. The laws of kashrut are ways of compromise with the eating of animal flesh. And that's in the book of Leviticus. Acts of how animals are slaughtered and acts of how meat is prepared is all part of the compromise structure that Leviticus will address. What about disease? I said everything is about separation. When you develop a rash, and the rabbis of ancient times had no knowledge of what the rash meant, what we could do, the rabbis developed separation. Separation was the key point. You'll notice that I'm ignoring the phone call. I'm ignoring the phone call because I love you and I will not take the phone instead of you. Okay? Now, so if you're maybe skin disease, leprosy, what is it you're required to do? Isolate, right? Separate. The rabbis understood something about contagion. And they took Leviticus and the teachings in Leviticus as a guideline. Risa, will you kind of get my phone? Are you there? It's somehow people are persistent. Okay, now, separation. One of the nastiest descriptions in Leviticus and in the rabbinic literature is chukat goyim, the way non-Jews govern themselves. We are supposed to avoid chukat goyim by every means possible. So,
Amen.
you know where this really got extreme? Have you ever seen a Hasidic Jew dressed in full garb? Yeah? Why do they wear 18th century Polish garb? Why? I'm sorry, Doug?
I'm sorry. I thought I was muted. Separation.
You weren't muted. I'll never mute you, Doug. But separation, that is to say, you look at the way non-Jews in the 18th century, 19th century dressed, and we cannot dress like that. So dressing in 19th century Polish garb is the way Hasidic Jews observe Chukat Goyim. And if you understand, that's a little weird because they're dressing the way 19th century Poles dressed, and they say that's how we avoid dressing like everybody else. I will tell you, today I did my usual. I go for a 3-mile walk. I do that every day, just about. Every day, just about.
Oh, God bless you.
And I was walking along and I passed a group of 6 or 7 yeshiva boys who are off from yeshiva because of the Purim celebration. Rabbi, okay? I turned around to them and said, Chag Purim Sameach. Have a happy Purim. And they responded with appreciation. They were recognized because of the garb they wear. I, on the other hand, was not recognizable by the garb I was wearing, except for the fact that I wear a baseball cap on which is written Saba, grandfather. So you'd have to know Saba to know that this guy's Jewish. So that works. To be holy, according to the book of Leviticus, is to be separate. Separate. Okay. Okay, what do I see? Rebecca, what did I do wrong now?
Well, I have a note here that Hukat Goyim is to not follow the practice of Gentiles.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that was non-threatening. A chukah is a law. Goyim, as used in Torah and rabbinic literature, does not mean the way some Jews use goyim. Goyim simply means the other nations of the world, period. No value attached.
Thank you.
Chukat Goyim, it's what the Gentiles do. Fine. We don't do that. From my perspective, growing up, Chukat HaGoyim meant I support the Cleveland Browns and hate the Pittsburgh Steelers. As far as I'm concerned, Pittsburgh Steelers are Chukat Goyim. And it stayed with me. I'm not quite, don't go into that, but it's complicated. Why, and you're going to have to open up on this, why do people sacrifice at all? Vayikra, Torah Kohanim, Leviticus is all about sacrifice. What is the rationale for sacrifice, which is pretty much a universal phenomenon one way or the other? What's the point of attaching sacrifice to religious practice, Doug?
To make God happy?
I like that.
I mean, I see people, being thrown into a volcano in, an Aztec,
Yeah, the last thing a Jewish person thrown into a volcano in the time of the Aztecs should answer is, Kachahem hachayim, that's life. Boom, sizzle. Yeah, Doug, there is certainly back in ancient Assyrian, Akkadian, et cetera, all kinds of things that you have to appease the god or gods. And, one of the dramatic scenes is of gods gathered around like little animals gathered around the sacrifice and eating, like, oh boy, these people are feeding us. Yeah. There are people still today who believe that God wants our sacrifices. Whatever we consider our sacrifices. That is certainly not something that liberal Judaism has at all, but as a founding reason for sacrifice, yes. But there's more. There's more. Why do people sacrifice, Risa?
To channel our violent thoughts that are part of our DNA, to sublimate our violent impulses.
That's pretty serious. To sublimate some of our violent impulses. Sometimes by slaughtering an animal, by carrying out the ritual, we are controlling some of our less attractive impulses. And the answer is definitely yes. I see Roy.
I like what Risa said, so I'll take that and kind of merge it.
No, don't do that. I'll have to deal with her later. But okay.
The act of sacrifice. So humans need meat or to survive. They need the energy, but it becomes a metaphoric mediation to connect the humankind with a spiritual authority. And I guess they must have some sort of, they have to be able to moderate the killing of a living being to achieve this connection. And so they're able to eat, yet at the same time be able to connect with a higher source, the cause of creation.
Roy, that's great. You raise one of the tremendous theological problems that those of us who believe in a singular one God have. How do we breach the gap between the infinite and perfect God and us? And one of the ways that people found that they thought worked was to offer sacrifice. The Torah talks about the sweet smelling savor of the sacrifice. And you almost get the feeling, actually, I'm being careful, you get the feeling that they somehow believe that God can smell the odor of the sacrifice. We sacrifice as a way of reaching out to that which cannot be touched. That's part of it. That's really, really good. Ben.
Thank you, Rabbi. I was thinking, I think it's sort of on the same note, but a little different, to show man's or the human's dominion over the animals. So we sacrifice them and say, hey, you know, we still have ultimate control.
Yeah, I'm not sure the cows get the point. But
Well,
yeah, it is dominion if we have the capacity to kill. But remember what we're saying, that within the Torah context, it's a secondary dominion. The better thing would be the wolf and the lamb lying down together. The better thing would be for us to be eating salads and not flesh. All of sacrifice and the laws of kashrut are expressions of compromise. Let me be very clear. I am a flesh eater. I am not saying, but my granddaughter will not sit next to me when I eat my meat, because in her mind, taking the life of any animal is unsupportable, impossible. But yes, that's great. Do we have any other reason for sacrifice? I'm going to say something which, hi Merle, I'm going to say something which goes back. I think Doug talked about throwing someone down a volcano. Human sacrifice was big. It remained big into the time of the Aztecs and Incas, right? Human sacrifice was big. And one of the things that animal sacrifice is a substitute for is human sacrifice. Now, here is a conundrum, and I want you to know that I failed, so you can feel very superior. When I was a rabbi in the pulpit and had the whole big operation, I was contacted by a member of the congregation who was somewhere in the Bahamas. Rabbi Davids, I confessed, yes, that's my name. I want to make a contribution to the congregation. Not bad, right? That's a good thing. So I said, I love you. God will bless you. Your children are blessed. Use the usual stuff. And he said, the only problem is I am under investigation by the federal government for tax evasion. And I still want, because I think the charges are faked, fabricated, made up. And I was raised in the community. I want to give a significant donation, but I can't write you a check, and I can't use a credit card, and I can't set foot on mainland America. Here's what I like. This is true. Please don't laugh. This is true. And I was young. And I want to say I was young. I did many stupid things when I was young. And when I do stupid things today, I just say, well, I'm still young. Rabbi, would you come down here? I'll pay for the ticket. That we could arrange. Would you come down here and pick up the cash that I want to donate to the congregation? And you know how this goes in some of those television shows? And now, in a moment, the result of that deliberation. It was a sizable gift. And he passed away. So nothing that I say now can harm him. I went down to the Bahamas, fearful that the IRS was going to attack me instantly. And he gave me the gift which he wanted me to bring back. I want to spread the blame. Because of this, I went to my temple board first. And I said, if I did this, would you accept the gift? And they got right to the heart of the matter. How much? The ethics of it depended upon the size of the gift. So I went down there with board authorization. Now I know that in Leviticus it says, you may not offer as a sacrifice anything that is stolen. Leviticus, had I known, I knew a lot of the Bible by then, but I did not know that passage. If I had known then, I never would have gone. You can't offer a sacrifice of something that's stolen. You can't offer a sacrifice of something that's not yours. By the way, you don't have to have exotic stories like that. You can have hundreds of other stories of people running illegal businesses and then making major donations and maybe even being honored at a dinner. That happens a lot. Leviticus says, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. Next thing, anyone know what the Hebrew word for a sacrifice is? Korban. 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 Why is that important? Because that is a word made up of a three-letter Hebrew root, kuf resh vet, which means to draw close. The very root meaning of a sacrifice is to allow us to draw near to God, to bridge the gap that I referred to previously. Now, let's deal with an easy reason. Get rid of guilt. Sacrifice does that too. Get rid of guilt. I was raised in a conservative home where the eating of certain foods was far too often permitted. So I was raised in a conservative home, which was very loose with Jewish law. And I became aware of that. And one day I ordered a meal in a non-kosher restaurant, but it wasn't no forbidden food in it, I thought. And I was happily eating what I ordered when it was pointed out to me that little pieces of a pig had been put into what it was that I was eating. How does Jewish law allow me to fix this? How do I get out of it? How do I deal with my guilt? The fact that I can still mention it to you, you know that the guilt is still there. Okay, was someone saying something, Doug? No? Okay, so that's sacrifice is a way of setting aside guilt. And that's one of the reasons why Yom Kippur has one of the most complex systems of sacrifice. So we worry about that. Here's a good one. If I offer the right sacrifice, God has to forgive me. I'd like your comments on that point of view. If I offer the right sacrifice, I've pushed the down button or whatever on the forgiveness elevator, and God has to forgive me.
No.
What's
May
the
I say-
response?
May I say something?
Who's that?
Donna?
Donna, please.
I think obedience to the Torah, to God's commands, and the best of our ability, we're only human. And when we fall short, we immediately admit that and we try to change and do better. But we're all human. But I think that sacrifice, no. But I want to ask
Does
a question.
God have
Okay.
to forgive us when we pray and say Ashamnu Bagadnu Gazanu Davinu Hishanu.
Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur, yes.
Does
I
God
think
have to forgive? This is a very, Risa.
Kavanah.
The answer is correct. You want to fill it in? And
It's kavanah is what you are thinking about, what your intention is when you do it. If you're not intending to forgive, to really seek forgiveness, then God doesn't have to respond to you.
I
It's
agree.
not what you do, it's what you're thinking about at the time.
Right on.
that's great. Any other comments? Any other comments on that? When we go to Shul on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and do a magnificent job of davening every single word, does that mean the work is over? Answer is no. Doug?
It's a matter of heart, Rabbi. It's a matter of heart.
Excuse me, Doug?
We don't know what God thinks. So I think that Risa is right. It's all in our mind, if we accept that we were wrong and believe in our heart that the forgiveness did it and are willing to change our ways, then it worked. If on the other hand, and you still keep the guilt, then it didn't work.
There is actually, and you're so right, Doug, there's actually a statement of the Talmud that says, a person who sins, atones, and sins again is worse than the person who sinned. If you're going to go through an atonement process, prayer, sacrifice, which replaced sacrifice, but if you're going to do that and then go back to the way you have been living, as far as we understand our relationship with God, we are worse off. Very interesting. We're running out of time, and I want to give one other gloriously large principle. Along with lahavdil, to separate, along with holiness, there is an obsessive concern in Leviticus for order. Very, very important. The Hebrew calendar has got to be specified and clearly followed. By the way, not to go into that discussion, which is not possible now, one of the things that Risa and I found to be so easy in Israel is to live with the Jewish calendar, because everyone around us was living with the Jewish calendar. It was everywhere we looked. And it's harder in the United States. Obsessive concern for order. Which sacrifice comes when? The Torah, here is this little piece of wisdom, is totally aware of the disorder in existence. It wants us to separate. It wants us to be orderly, to do things in the right way. The ideal is to create a world in which there is order. By the way, which holiday separates order more than any other holiday?
Pesach.
I see just Risa. Okay. What?
Seder. Pesach.
Seder. What does the word Seder mean?
Order.
Order. The whole structure is order. It's done in order. But I just need to point out that that's not unique to Pesach. Order is everywhere required. And one of the great contributions to order was when rabbis started creating complete prayer books, which did not exist in the biblical period, which did not exist in the days of the Second Temple. Prayer books come later, and that was a way to take order away from the temple, which no longer existed and operated on a strict order with the sacrifices and the priests and the whole thing, and to bring order into our lives. The ideal is to build a world. I can end with a positive note. To build a world here on earth, which is a replica of how we understand the heavens. A place of separation, a place of order, a place in which human beings can reach out to a God who is in some way aware that we are reaching. And I wrote this really clever closing line for today. How do we gain all of the above in our own lives in 2024? The book of Leviticus is a fabulous, boring, important book with incredible teachings. I thank you for letting me spend this hour with you and exploring Leviticus and maybe giving it a leg up on being popular. And may I wish you Chag Purim Sameach.
Chag Purim Sameach. Thank you.
Happy Purim and a speedy recovery, the Rabbi Leader. You folks were great. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Risa.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
Thanks
Shabbat
for the smiles.
Shalom.
Shabbat
Purim
shalom this
Sameach.
time.
Don't forget Sunday.
Okay, I want the book. I'll pay for it. Risa, bring me a copy signed by your husband and by his co-writer. I know her name. I just wrote it on my book. I just met her online. So, hey, Merle, how are you? See you. Smile. Gonna miss you. I'm trying to arrange my transportation. Oy vey, such a car service. We have to say it's musical therapy. No problem. Rabbi Leader approved that. I send him a message. Love you. Bye.